For solving algebraic word problems, we have several kind of scenarios, and one of them that is pretty common is the distance, speed, and time problems. All right, so here we have a cyclist that cycles at a constant speed from P to Q at a distance of 60 kilometers apart, and the speed is x kilometers per hour. So what we can do here is actually to sketch a very simple diagram just to represent all the information given. And then we also need to have to recall this relationship between distance, speed, and time. All right. So with this, we figured that time taken is actually distance over speed. And then with that, then we can start to work on the first part, which is in part A, we are supposed to write down the time taken by the cyclist, which is actually 60 divided by x, right, which is distance divided by speed. However, for this sort of problem, it's very important for us to put down the unit, all right? And so time taken is actually 60 over x hours. And at all times, you need to put, not just put down the units, and to also ensure that the units are consistent. In part B, we have a new speed. And so here I put down the new speed, all right, just for me to, for it to be easier for me to process the information. So we have the new speed at x plus 3 kilometers per hour, right? And therefore the new time taken will be 60 over x plus 3 hours, okay? And then next, in part 2, we're supposed to form an equation in terms of x, and we're given this additional piece of information where the time taken is actually 40 minutes less. And so therefore, we are actually supposed to compare the time taken with the original speed versus the new speed, all right? And then we're told that the difference is actually 40 minutes, all right? And earlier on, I've mentioned you need to make the units consistent. So therefore, when we formulate the equation, we need to put the difference of the time in hours. All right, so it's 40 minutes divided by 60 to get hours. Then the next thing is, how do I take the difference? Do I take 60 over x minus 60 over x plus 3, or the other way around? All right, so in here, you do need to consider that the new speed is faster. And as a result, the new time taken will be shorter, which means numerically it is a smaller number. So therefore, we need to put 60 over x first, then minus 60 over x plus 3. So that itself gives us the difference in time, which is actually 40 over 60 hours. There is also another way to figure this out. So basically, if the denominator is a smaller number, which is x in this case, then the overall will be bigger. All right, so just to illustrate this simple scenario, let me just erase this first. Let's say we compare 1 over 2 versus 1 over 10. So clearly, 1 over 2 as a number is larger, and the denominator is smaller. All right, I'm talking about the denominator being smaller, and then the overall number is larger. So that's another way to figure that out. Okay, so having said that, now let's move on, and we want to simplify the right hand side. You do not need to simplify the left hand side, because number one, you're just supposed to form an equation without any particular constraint imposed on you. Question does not say that you need to simplify it. Then you try not to do that difficult part first, and to avoid making mistakes and getting penalized. So right hand side is a pretty straightforward simplification, so just put it down as 2 over 3, right? And then that's the reason why we don't want to do so much simplification, because anyway in part C we're supposed to solve it. So when the question says, hence find his new speed, this new speed is actually asking for x plus 3. So therefore, essentially, this part C is asking you to solve the equation in part B, part 2. All right. Furthermore, recall that whenever the question says hence, you are supposed to use the previous part. So you're not supposed to numerically work this out in some way. All right, so you're supposed to work this out algebraically from B part 2. All right, so first thing first, you will need to combine the two fractions on the left hand side. So remember that if you are to want to cross multiply, you will need to have only one fraction, or basically one term on each side of the equation. And the problem is, on the left hand side you have two terms or two fractions. So, right, you will need to do this. So notice that there is no common factors between the two denominators of the fraction. So therefore, it's okay to just go ahead and multiply x plus 3 top and bottom in the first fraction, and then second fraction you're just going to multiply with x top and bottom. All right. Then on the right hand side you can't do much anyway, so leave it as that, right? And then combine the two fractions, and of course the denominator is actually x times x plus 3, which gives you x squared plus 3x. On the right hand side you have 2 over 3, and then in the numerator you basically have 60x plus 180 minus 60x. So 60x minus 60x, that'll be removed, so you're essentially left with 180 over x squared plus 3x equals to 2 over 3. Right? By now you are able to cross multiply this. Of course, that is equivalent to saying I multiply 3 times of x squared plus 3x on both sides. So in a simple shortcut, you're just going to cross multiply, and then you have 3 times of 180 equals to 2 times of x squared plus 3x, and I've run out of space, so I'm just going to bring this to the next half of the screen. And yes, so then now you actually have 540 equals to 2x squared plus 6x. All right, and then you will also have 2x squared plus 6x minus 540 equals to 0, and then you can also divide 2 throughout and be left with x squared plus 3x minus 270 equals to 0. And then if we were to factorize this, okay, you can also choose to use a quadratic formula, but in this case it's somewhat straightforward to just factorize this. All right, and finally you solve for both solutions, which is x equals to 15 or x equals to negative 18. All right, so of course you're going to reject this, right, because x is supposed to be at least 0. Okay, and in some questions, if let's say the question just asks you to solve the equation, then you don't really need to reject it. In fact, you shouldn't. If the question just says solve, hence solve the equation, for example, then they are just interested in you solving for the x as a numerical value, then you do not actually need to reject it. But in this case, this question says hence find the new speed, so you're directly going into the solution with a context, so you will need to reject it immediately. So what I'm trying to say is, for some situations you don't immediately reject, for some situations you reject. So it hinges on whether the question is actually asking you to solve for the value, the numerical value, or solving for speed, which has a certain context of being basically non-negative. All right, so here we have x equals to 15 as a solution. However, recall that when we are asked to find, we are actually asked to find the new speed, and so new speed equals to x plus 3, which is 15 plus 3, and that's equals to 18 kilometers per hour. And that's it for this example.